We are honored to be hosting the Veteran of the Month project here on WZOT, Hometown 101.9 FM and AM 1220. All veterans deserve our deepest respect, recognition, and admiration for the decision they made to serve, defend, and protect our country. It's an honor to be part of sharing their stories. Here is this month's Veteran of the Month.
My name is Robert J. Gurley, Sr., better known as Bobby. I was in the U.S. Army. I'm originally from Aragon, Georgia, and now I live in Rockmart. I took basic training in Camp Blanding, Florida. That's in Jacksonville. The replacement center, that was for soldiers who were killed or wounded in service. In the replacement, you would go overseas as a replacement for those soldiers. And so that's the type of training I had in Camp Blanding, Florida. I stayed 16 weeks there as a training. And after I left there, I came home for a week. And then I went to Fort Meade, Maryland. I stayed there for another week of training. And then I boarded a ship and made a trip to North Africa. I traveled to North Africa, stayed there for some advanced training. And also I left there for Oran, North Africa, and went to Naples, Italy. Stayed in Naples, Italy a couple of weeks. And then left there, went to the Anzio beachhead is where I entered combat. Well, I entered combat in Naples, it's Anzio beachhead. And from there, I was in combat for several months and advanced on toward Rome. I was in the infantry. We captured Rome, took Rome over, and we advanced on north of Rome, along the coast of Italy. There's a small port town of Leghorn. I was in the mountains in combat at that time, and that's where I was wounded by a German. We were attacking the mountain, and the Germans had a machine gun set up. I was wounded in my left arm by a German machine gun. I didn't realize I was wounded. I had on a long sleeve shirt. Back then in the service there, if your arms were not covered with a shirt, they could be seen by the enemy. And so we were wearing wool shirts, and I looked down and saw blood on my left arm, and I realized that I had been wounded. So I was trying to decide what I could do. So I looked behind me maybe 40 or 50 feet, and I saw a large rock. So I jumped up and ran to get behind that rock, and when I did, the bullets were tearing the ground up behind me, fired at me again. So I jumped behind the rock and stayed about 30 or 40 minutes. And then I found an area later farther on back, which I advanced. I stayed there until a mule train came along, and they were headed back to the aid station. And the aid station was several miles back, and it took us about an hour to get back. And when I arrived at the aid station, that's when they doctored my arm. They were talking about how dirty it was. I said, well, if you'd been up there where the woods were on fire and everything, and I was drafted as soon as I became 18, I received a letter to have a blood test. And about 3 weeks later, I received a letter to come to Fort Mac for an examination. And they gave me 3 weeks to come back and prepare to leave. And so I had the opportunity to choose the Coast Guard, Army, or Navy. So I chose the Army at that time. One would be I sacrificed my education by being drafted and as soon as I came out of high school, so I didn't have a chance to get an education before I went in. After I came out, I decided to go to a business school and study accounting, so I finished 18 months with Southern Business School in Atlanta. I guess a proud moment would be with my grandchild who had muscular dystrophy. He and I were having a lot of fun together, and he lived in Cedartown. We just played a game of pool together, and he was very active in that. And then he'd come to Rockmart in the truck and would say, Pop, said, what are you doing this afternoon? And he'd come over and I'd carry him to lunch. He couldn't walk, but he had a seat where he could hook a safety seat, and it would pick it up out of the back of the truck and swing it around to where he could get it into it from the seat of the truck. And so he'd come over and we'd go out to eat together a lot, and something I really remember well is all my time with him. I was in there 2 years and 7 months. I was married, lost my wife 7 years ago with Alzheimer's. I have 2 children. My son is Bob Gurley, and my daughter is a gay pop. So I have 2 children. I have 5 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. This is a telegram that my mother received that I was missing in action. At that time, a friend and I, we had gone out on the skirts of this small town to make an attack. And while we were there, we got separated from other guys. We got lost, and then we were trying to find a way back. So we running out of food, and we ran into some Italians. They were good enough. Even though we were Americans fighting, the soldiers there, they gave us some extra food to eat for a while there. I was out of action there for about 3 or 4 weeks. years, and my mother had received a telegram that I was missing in action. I was just happy when I could give her the news when I did return, though. Then she received a telegram later that I had returned to duty, so I was just pleased with that. I put a message on the one I sent her back that I said, "All well and safe. All my love. Please don't worry." I have another sheet here. It's about Matt Campbell, a friend of mine. He and I were in Italy at the same time, and we didn't know each other. We're in Italy. We were both wounded, and we were at this reconditioning camp, which is where you train getting ready to go back into combat. I was writing a letter home. He said he thought he recognized me, so he came over and looked down over my shoulder, and he saw it said Aragon, Georgia, and he knew then it was me. He introduced himself, so we had a big time, and we went out and had our picture made together, and then we left there, and we both went back into combat before the war ended. He lived in Rockmart for several years, so he died a few years ago. This is a plaque that was prepared by my children, Gay and Bob. One of them is a Purple Heart, and also the Good Conduct Medal, and the Bronze Star. That was for some special action in combat. Then I have the one is a shoulder patch, the picture of a Red Bull's head, 34th Infantry Division. And then I have the Infantry Combat Badge. That's to signify that you're in the infantry. I feel fortunate to reach the age I am at 91, May the 26th. I am Bobby Gurley. I'm just proud that I was able to serve, and especially proud that I could return home safely. I served in the Army from August of 1943 till December the 31st of 1945.
Thank you for helping us celebrate this month's Veteran of the Month here on Hometown 101.9 and AM 1220 WZOT.